Ito ang Broad Stream Cast Communicators, ang naiiba at kakaibang plataporma sa digital broadcast. Mula Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao hanggang sa iba't ibang dako ng mundo. Broad Stream Cast Communicators, ang sandigan ng sambayanan mula sa walang labis at walang kulang na pagbabalita, paglilingkod, maglalahad ng mga mapagbuong komentaryo at usaping pambayan para sa kapakanan ng karamihan. Broad Stream Cast Communicators, tuwirang maglilingkod ngayon hanggang sa susunod na henerasyon. Ang sinumang lingkod bayan ay may tungkulin na pinanumpaan. Nanumpa na maglilingkod ng buong puso batay sa tanggapan na kanyang pamumunuan. Bago ang lahat, mamamayan muna. Ito ang palatuntunang maglalahad ng mga tuwirang impormasyon upang magsilbing gabay ng ating mga nanunungkulan saan mang tanggapan ng pamahalaan para sa kapakanan ng mamamayan. Bago ang lahat, mamamayan muna. Maglalatag ng mga naangkop na payo para sa lahat ng mamamayan na umaasam ng tunay na pagbabago at kaginhawahan sa buhay. Bago ang lahat, mamamayan muna. At ngayon, narito ang inyong lingkod, Cora Alma De Leon.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Today is Tuesday and once again, please like and share our live video and our FB page, Broad Stream Cast Communicators. And also you can follow me on Facebook at Cora Alma De Leon, or you may also contact me at 0918-912-3546. As you know, this program, tune in our program, Bago ang Lahat, Mamamayan muna every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Tamang-tama, nandito na ang ating co-host, si mamaya papakilala ka na, si Reymund Arcega, at ang ating guest, of course, si Guido Delgado. Kaya sabi ko kasi hindi nakalagay yung pangalan. Pero yung sinabi ko dito, kung may komento at tanong kayo tungkol sa ating pinag-uusapan, ay huwag kayong mag-atubili at you can contact us and you can give your comments. Dire-diretso na tayo sa programa, no? At ito'y nagsisimula ako ng prayer for the nation. Lord, let me be the change I want to see. To do with strength and wisdom, all that needs to be done, and become the hope that I can be. Set me free from my fears and hesitations. Grant me the courage and humility. Fill me with spirit to face the challenge and start the change I long to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark in faith, service, and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. At dahil I was in government for 34 years, gusto kong ulit-ulitin yung panunumpa sa watawat, which goes like this. Ako ay Pilipino, buong katapatang nanunumpa sa watawat ng Pilipinas at sa bansang kanyang sinasagisan, na may dangal, katarungan at kalayaan na pinakikilos ng sambayan ng makadiyos, makakalikasan, makatao at makabansa.
Panunumpa ng mga kawani ng gobyerno. Ako'y kawani ng gobyerno, tungkulin ko ang maglingkod ng tapat at mahusay. Dahil dito ako'y papasok ng maaga at magtatrabaho ng lampas sa takdang oras kung kinakailangan. Pagsisilbi ako ng magalang at mabilis sa lahat ng nangangailangan. Pangangalagaan ko ang mga gamit, kasangkapan at ibang pag-aari ng pamahalaan. Pagiging pantay at makatarungan ang pakikitungo ko sa mga lumalapit sa aming tanggapan. Magsasalita ako laban sa mga katiwalian at pagsasamantala. Hindi ko gagamitin ang aking panunungkulan sa sarili kong kapakanan. Hindi ako hihingi o tatanggap ng suhol. Sisikapin kong madagdagan ang aking talino at kakayahan upang ang antas ng paglilingkod sa bayan ay patuloy na maitaas sapagkat ako'y kawani ng gobyerno at tungkulin ko ang maglingkod ng tapat at mahusay sa bayan ko. At sa panahong ito, ako at ang aking kapwa kawani ay kailangan tungo sa isang maunlad, masagana at mapayapang Pilipinas sa harap ninyong lahat. Ako'y taus-pusong nanunumpa.
Maraming salamat, Dr.Reymund Arcega. At ngayon, babasahin ko naman yung aking reflection for today. Today is Tuesday. Today we have to make a decision to choose peace. Peace in our hearts and minds, peace in our communities. How do we achieve peace? The answer is development. You have, on many occasions, heard me say that there can be no peace without development, nor development without peace. So we remind our listeners that we stand four square in this effort, even in this pandemic. Even the matter of unspent funds of the DOH for the challenge of pandemic is not acceptable to achieve development. Even when the healthcare givers feel aggrieved and rose to arms because of they continue to be unpaid, isn't that a peace issue? Because they have come forward to ask for justice. And when justice is denied of fair demands, we stand again and again that we cannot have this uh, um, without develop. We cannot have peace without development. Today and henceforth, we will continue to be unstoppable the Red Cross way, remembering that our program is Bago ang Lahat, Mamamayan muna. At dahil sa pagsisimula ng ating programa, sinasama na natin ang awit na makapagbagdamin ang ayan ang Pilipino. Pakinggan natin.
Ilo, naiiba, natatangi, alamin ang mga ginintuang katangian ng ating dakilang lahi.
Iba-ibang ating pinagmulahan, sa iisang bayan sinilangan. Mga islang biyaya sa pinagpala, likha ng isang Diyos o bathala. Tinataglay ang dakilang yaman, sa ating binigay ang perlas ng silangan. Gintong lupa't karagatan, kay gandang kalikasan, ito'y sasagipin pangangalagaan.
Yan ang Pilipino, mapalad ang lahing ito, likas ang talino, kailangan ng mundo ang Pilipino. Mapagmahal ang lahi ko, may tapang malasakit, kaming mga Pilipino. Mapalad ang lahing ito, likas ang talino, payabunin natin to, ang Pilipino. Mapagmahal ang lahi ko, masipag malikhain, yan ang Pilipino.
Halo-halo man ang ating ibig, iisa pa rin ang ating lahi.
Katotohanan ng kalooban, ating isabuhay. Ako, ikaw, tayo'y magmahalan.
Yan ang Pilipino, mapalad ang lahing ito, likas ang talino, kailangan ng mundo ang Pilipino. Mapagmahal ang lahi kaming mga Pilipino. Mapalad ang lahing ito, likas ang talino, payapungin natin ko ang Pilipino. Mapagmahal ang lahi ko, masipag malikhain, yan ang Pilipino. Mapalad ang lahing ito, likas ang talino, kailangan namin ito, ang Pilipino. Mapagmahal ang lahi ko, ay dapat malasakit kaming mga Pilipino. Likas ang talino, payabunin natin to, ang Pilipino. Isa ang lahi, halo-halo man ang libig, yan ang Pilipino.
Maraming salamat kay Ginang Sonia Rocco for that. Yan ang Pilipino. Unfortunately, hindi ho maganda ang lumabas because parang naputol. But at the same time, that is, nagloloko yung StreamYard. Kasi nakalagay dito, powered by StreamYard, nagkaroon tayo ng problema. Pero sa pagpapatuloy po, gusto ko lang sabihin na ang mga nag-like na sa atin ay mula sa Broad Stream Cast Communicators. Gandang hapon po from Marco Remulla, si Maricel Florendo Labsang, magandang buhay po sa atin lahat. Stay safe. Si Rosalie Tirante, good afternoon. Si Clarissa Hoxon Fernandez, good afternoon. Si Ambet Cayetano, magandang hapon po sa lahat. Chairman Reymund Arcega, Secretary Cora Alma De Leon, watching from NKTI. Stay strong, smart, everyone. More power sa programang nyo. Si Jen Domingo Valdez, good afternoon po. Secretary Cora and Dr.Reymund Arcega. Kasi nga hindi pa lumalabas sa retrato si Guido Delgado. Si Jinky Bueno Eliot, mapagpalang araw po Ma'am Cora and guest. Palagi itong nanonood, nakikinig sa atin. Siguro, wala pa sa picture si Guido. She might, siguro, ayan na, nakapasok na. Ang unang first salvo na nagtatanong Guido is Dr. Reymund Arcega. May standard question siya to get to know our guest. Sige, go ahead, Dr. Reymund.
Magandang hapon, Cora. Magandang hapon, Dr. Reymund Arcega.
Magandang hapon po sa ating mga tagapakinig at tagapanood ngayong hapon ito sa ating programang Bago ang Lahat, Mamamayan Muna. Napakaswerte po nating makasama ngayong hapon ang ating butihing panauhin, si Sir Guido Alfredo Delgado. Sir Delgado, gaya po ng aming nakagawian dito, gusto po kayong makilala ng ating mga taga-subaybay. Kung maaari po sana ay maibahagi nyo sa amin saan po kayo pinanganak, sino po ang inyong mga magulang, saan po kayo nag-aral at ano po ang mga posisyon na inyo pong napagsilbihan sa buong buhay po ninyo. Magandang hapon po, Sir Guido Delgado. Thank you.
Magandang hapon naman, Dr. Arcega. I was born in Cagayan de Oro in Mindanao. I grew up in Zamboanga City and I got married in Davao. So I went to public school all the way from grade school, although I had two years stint in Ateneo, but I went to public schools ending up in UP. Pagkatapos, I took a master's degree abroad, but more importantly, I came back to work in Mindanao. First in Davao in a financial institution, and then in a bank in Cagayan de Oro until the government caught me in 1992. I tried to hide for a month, not trying to show my face kay FBR, no, 1993, thereabouts. Hinahabol ako, then he told me, you start working in government. So So I started as a banker. I ended up as a president of National Power during the height of the crisis of the 1990s. And I was telling Cora earlier, I was 36 years old when I joined the government. By the time I left the government, I was looking 63 years old. So that's how FER made me work and made us, all of us, work. I'm sure Cora will attest to that. So I married my ex-girlfriend from Davao, it's Joy, and we have 4 lovely children and even 3 lovelier grandchildren. As they say, I never realized that apostolate can be a very, very good way of life. You can spoil your grandchildren without having any responsibility at all for their discipline. So I have 3 lovely boys, Emilio, Andres, and Alfonso. So that's my life right now. I work from home, and I've been doing that for over 1.5 years. I run a few businesses, but basically from home. That's all, Dr. Arcega.
Kasama nga kami sa cabinet ng ni President Ramos, and he remembered that we ran, I think, a workshop sa National Power Corporation at that time. But anyway, ang importante ngayon, what he's doing, and kinuwento nga niya na he had to set up yung power, no? Kasi nung time ni Presidente Cory, palaging brown out, blackout. Kaya that was the first problem that President Ramos solved with Guido, solving the problem of power outage. So, siguro kwento mo lang, how did you do it? Yung bang parang, of course, kiniticize din after si Presidente Ramos na nagka-Asian crisis, and therefore nagka-problema tayo sa ating economy. Maybe you walk us through how you were able to get those going, yung power natin, kasi the name itself, National Power Corporation, was intended to bring power to our country, and we are 7,100 islands. It's not a joke to be able to do that. Guido, you walk us through what you did during the time of President FVR, kasi hindi pwede ang hindi pwede kay FVR. Go ahead, Guido.
Well, first of all, I must. Well, I think people now know that I was not, and I'm not an engineer at all. I was.
Yes.
I'm a graduate of agricultural business from UP Los Baños, and I was running a bank. And I was always wondering why FER chose a banker to run National Power. That was the first banker to run National Power. I was not an engineer. I didn't understand what the kilowatt was. But eventually I found out that the problem that the president engineer saw in National Power was money.
Yes.
Because at that point, we had a lot of coup d'etats, if you remember, just a few years before Ramos's time. And no one wanted to lend money to the Philippines. We needed to raise about $4 billion. And we had zero in the bank. So how do you mobilize $4 billion so that you can recover your power shortage, no? And so that's why we started the IPPs, etc., which of course got a lot of flack shortly thereafter. But I'd like to relate that to today, okay? Because before the COVID-19 happened, the DOE was already warning that we will have shortages, no? And well, it's not a blessing, but when the COVID-19 hit us, demand went down by 20%. So luckily in 2020, well, not luckily, no, it's a bad example, but I'm telling you, there's a 20% reduction in demand. So we didn't have any brownouts. Today, however, 2021, we're swinging back to what we were in 2019, and we're beginning to start having the shortages again. So at that time, going back now to the Ramos time, we made a conscious decision. Shall we build for today or shall we build for tomorrow? And the decision that we made with President Ramos was, we build for tomorrow. We did not want investors coming to the Philippines saying, tamang-tama lang yung kuryente ng Pilipinas. We wanted to show them that we had more than enough. Please come come to the Philippines, invest in the Philippines. We have more than enough power for you. Now, it's just unfortunate that the
Asian
Asian
crisis,
crisis
di ba?
happened. But then, if you recall, no major plants were built after that, right? And we
Yeah.
again had the crisis during the time of President Aquino. So this will keep recurring because we have not really built anything more than what the Ramos
No.
administration built. Even the transmission lines were built during the Ramos time. No, so how many years ago was that? That's quarter of a
Yeah.
century ago. No, at that time, my children were like 10 years old, 7 years old. Now I have grandchildren, and we have nothing major built yet. No? So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll learn our lesson and continue to build power plants, and hopefully in the renewable energy sector.
Yes. You speaking of renewable energy, kasi ito yung buzzword din ngayon kasi even abroad, no, all over the world, they're talking about what will we do with this requirement ng renewable energy. And sabi ko nga, we need to know more about it because if you don't know, you will dismiss it as not important because you don't know, di ba? So, ang objective namin dito ni Raymond is to be able to dwell on the subject, bring it to the consciousness of the people, particularly those who don't know what it means and what should happen if we want things to happen to build. I always say to build a better world. Of course, I was saying peace and development. Kaya nga may problema tayo ng peace dahil wala tayong development. Kaya gusto namin through you, nakita ko dito, because you're correct, no? You're a banker, but you handled the National Power Corporation because that was needed. Kaya sabi ko, the needed of the moment, sabi ko nga. Kaya maganda yung naging resulta. Even though, after that, sabihin, masyado mataas ang power natin because we build too much, that's beside the point. Ang importante, we address the need, hoping for a future that was supposed to be better. And I must admit, the Ramos administration was a peaceful one. Wala nang kudeta at the time, walang masyadong gulo. And I guess, ang feeling ko at the time, we had the best of both worlds. We had the president who was military, but very civilian in character ang government that he built. No? He was not military, pero no. So, siguro Raymond, follow up, anong gustong malaman kay Guido? Kasi nagsimula na siya ng kanyang introduction. Family man siya, obvious, no? Grandfather na nga. At may anak na doktor, di ba? Guido, you have a
Yes,
son who's a doctor?
my son is a doctor. Well, sometimes he's assigned sa COVID ward in PGH, so he's in the Philippine General Hospital. And I remember watching movies in the past where the father would send their son to World War II, to war, and obviously there would be pain in the hearts of the parents. And I didn't realize I would face it myself. Whenever my son would leave for PGH after a 2-week furlough, all you can do is pray that he won't get affected. No, but you never can tell. So he does have some precautions, but ganito, Cora, di ba? I mean, this is a commitment that you have in your life. So okay, go for it and hope for the best. So yeah, I have my son in PGH.
My question, Secretary.
Merong high government official sa PGH. Pala yung anak niya yung doktor na sinabi na ako ang na-COVID. Pasyente ako sa PGH. Oo.
Well, they were not allowed to say who it was.
Yes,
no? So,
of course. Pero nung
course.
na-mention mo na doktor yun, obviously ako yung high government person na confide on. Anyway, Raymond, you ready with your question kay Guido? Kasi maraming mga ginawa si Guido to solve our problem. But at the same time, what he's doing now is far more important. I think it's future. Go ahead, Raymond.
Nakakahanga po, no? Ang isang banker ay naging presidente ng National Power, and today we're enjoying what you have done, no? In the National Power. Hypothetical question lang po, Sir Guido, no? Assuming lang po kayo yung magsasolve ng problema natin sa COVID ngayon, paano niyo po kaya kami tutulungang ma-solve yung problema na ito? Assuming you were assigned by the president, no, to to arrest, no? Of course, no? Nakakatuwa po kasi nabanggit po ninyo na ang inyo pong anak ay exposed sa COVID ngayon at marahil po ay exposed po kayo sa issue ngayon ng ating COVID na ito. Assuming lang po, total, sanay naman po kayong na-assign sa posisyon na hindi kayo doon nakalinya. But it's about your passion and vision. Paano po kaya sa palagay po ninyo kung kayo po ang maa-appoint o mabibigyan ng pagkakataon na ma-address po itong problema natin sa COVID?
Well, first of all, I'm not competent to say that, but if I have to get it from someone who's competent, it's my son. So his main solution is stay home. Okay, so that is something that he told us, and so we've been home since March of 2021. Now, the challenge here, of course, when you say work from home, is that A, you have work, and B, you have home. Unfortunately, many of our countrymen do not have work and do not have a home. So the challenge, therefore, is for government to find create the environment where we will be able to continue to have the economic activities that we desire, and at the same time find ways to mobilize the people to, I don't know. I remember in Albay where we operate. They had to find gymnasiums. They had to find tents, etc. That is what's happened in the rest of the country to mobilize the people, because we have a lot of slum areas where it's just impossible to have social distancing at all. No, I remember the one of the hotspots of COVID was a barangay in Cebu, where my priest friend, a classmate of mine, was the parish priest, and he said, Father, he said, why are you going on? Bakit kayo lumalabas? No? Sabi nila, well, Father, may COVID-19. Kung hindi kami lalabas, hindi kami makakain. So, hintayin na lang namin ng COVID-20 bago kami magbabalik sa mga bahay. No? So, hindi madali itong trabaho. So, in fact, I hear a lot of criticisms against the government. I just cannot sit down and say, well, the government could do better, etc. No, because Cora and I mean, Cora, you've been in government, okay? So
Yes.
you decide based on the available facts, available information that you have. So
Yes.
that's why I don't criticize the decision makers, because they must know what they're doing, given the fact that they have the facts and I don't. So I just follow what the IATF says. No, so if you ask my advice, follow the IATF. Follow your. I'm following my son. I stay home. So unfortunately, we have to help our compatriots who don't have work and don't have homes, so they cannot work from home. Yan ang sad part ng reality.
Tamang-tama, Raymond. Si Mabel Rowan palagi nagko-comment sa atin. Sabi, good afternoon. It's a privilege to listen to the backstory of how the power crisis was solved from Sir Guido himself. Building for tomorrow is a good impetus that guided them in the time of FPR, then and should still be applicable today. God bless. Tapos sabi niya, I totally relate to Sir Guido's sentiments on his apostolate and towards having a son as a medical frontliner these days. O may nagre-relate sa'yo, no? Tungkol doon. And Regina Concepcion Dulay, good afternoon. And speaking of Regina, birthday ngayon ni Beng Hernandez. Ito'y listener sa atin at we wish her a happy birthday. So, hindi po siya nagla-light dito, pero I am sure tayo nang mag-light sa kanya. To continue, go ahead, Raymond, yung question mo sa kanya, comment niya. Kasi gusto natin, ano yung ginagawa niya ngayon nung pinagkakabala niya, although he's at home. Sige, go ahead.
Well, we did well with the National Power Corporation during your leadership po. Siguro interesado po ang ating mga tagapakinig ngayon. Ano ba po ang mga sa palagay po ninyo ay mga dapat pa nating magawa para po sa ating mga kababayan. Isa pong realidad at hindi ko lang po alam kung ilan ang datos, no, na may mga lugar pa rin sa Pilipinas, no, na hindi pa rin po nararating or wala pa hong enough na electricity. At alam po natin na ang halaga ng power, no, ang electricity to propel development and growth in the country po. Kung ito po ay ating pag-uusapan, ano po kaya sa palagay ninyo, pagamat wala na po kayo sa NPC ngayon, na mga dapat pang maging direksyon ng gobyerno at maging priority pa sa mga susunod na panahon?
So, thank you, Dr. Arcega. 25 years ago, the whole world had this model that you have central power plants and you have long transmission lines to deliver to the homes.
Yeah.
Since
Transmission.
25 years have passed, technologies have improved vastly. Now, what is going to be the trend today and in the future is the democratization of power. What do I mean by democratization of power? That is when the consumers themselves produce power for themselves. They create power for themselves. And technically, this is called microgrid. No? So you start having microgrids because then the power comes from the sun, comes from you can
Sea.
use batteries,
Water.
you can come from the sea, and it's in a smaller grid. That's why it's called microgrid. So when typhoons come, and God forbid what's going to happen the next 2 days, no, we have big transmission lines falling down, and so we have weeks and sometimes even months of restoration because precisely our transmission system is not built for resiliency against the more frequent and the more ferocious typhoons. So what's the solution? The solution is think small, think
Yeah.
think microgrids, think rooftop solars, think about batteries, think about community power. So that is where the world should be going. In fact, I will be having I'll plug a little bit of my webinar as a UP
Yeah.
Vanguard on the 19th of October, 10 a.m. We invited the CEO of the New York Power Authority, which is the largest utility in the United States, and he's a Filipino, by the way, Cora. He's
Ano pangalan?
Gil Quiñones. Is the younger brother of Baste, who used to run Shell. No, so they have innovated after Hurricane Sandy, they had to innovate. They had to stop relying on central power plants. They had to put in, small power
Small.
plants within New York. And then when Puerto Rico was hit, it was the New York Power Authority that went down to Puerto Rico and restored the power there. No, so tayo dito, we should learn our lessons, no, because
Yes.
after a century, we keep putting up posts, no, and every typhoon that comes, they all fall down,
Bagsak.
and we put it up again, no. And you know what happened last November? 3 typhoons came in sequentially in a matter of days,
Yeah.
and we were really caught flat-footed with that, no, because kakatayo pa lang namin ng poste, babagsak naman ulit, no. So one of the things that we talked to Congress was maybe the government should put money into where its mouth is.
Small.
They talk about resiliency, and then we all talk about training on resiliency, but we need to put investments in resilient infrastructure.
Yes.
For example,
Yes.
you should start putting some cables underground so that you don't
They don't break down.
they don't break down during typhoons. So we have to think now of infrastructure for the future. And the good thing is the cost of this infrastructure, the cost of technologies have gone down tremendously, and things that people can actually afford.
Yeah.
So that's my passion right now. Go for democratization of power. Let the consumers produce their own power. Let the consumers give power to each other. I'm putting a platform where my neighbor can sell to my neighbor, and then among themselves without having to go to the big, what they call the spot market. No? So yun yung mga tignan namin. No?
And perfect, no? Because like kami, ini-espouse namin sa social work ng mga delivery of services, barangganic approach. So if that is the case, small communities, kasi we are an archipelago not accessible talaga, kaya you need long power lines, etc. Kung ang mangyayari, smaller areas, and kanya-kanya silang taking care of their own communities. And we really need to have a model for that.
Yes,
Anong lugar? Parang yung pinuntahan ni Obama na nagpakita ng kuryente, ano yung ilaw nung magbisita si President Obama sa Pilipinas, pinakita yata yung invention na ilaw na power na karon ng ilaw kahit walang kuryente, something like that. So
Yeah,
future na go ahead.
marami
Raymond?
ng kanyang technology,
Yes.
Cora, no? So we're looking at various, well, not just
Schemes.
research, that's really implementation. No? So we're looking at various types of implementation in the different island groups so that we don't have to carry diesel. During our time, I used to have our helicopters bring oil drums to the different
Yeah.
areas, And I said, well, this is not going to be sustainable.
Do
No?
that.
Not only is
Yes.
it dirty, you cannot sustain that kind of a cost of operation. No? So now we are pursuing renewable energy with solar and batteries and other types of renewable energy. One good thing about renewable energy, Cora, is unlike imported oil or imported coal,
Mm.
you don't have any fluctuating currency cost, and you don't need to use dollars because it's local. God gave you the sun, so you just convert it. So
Ang yaman natin,
uh,
no?
yaman natin, and then because you don't buy oil or coal, you're not subjected to any global price. So
Yeah.
from an economic standpoint, it
It's
will
the
help
best.
reduce. It's stable. It's non-inflationary. It does not contribute to any foreign exchange problems. So we should really go for renewable energy. The challenge, of course,
Energy.
is that they say, well, it's intermittent. Okay, the sun. You don't know when the sun will shine. Now there are technologies today that can
To make
smoothen
the
that
sunshine.
intermittency
Yes.
consistently. So I'm pushing for example, a technology where the sun will shine even at night. Now, some people said, Guido,
Wow.
how will you do that?
Para
Sabi
ka
ko,
nasa Norway.
"Tra- sabi ko, trade secret na yun.
Oo. Hindi. Pero ako nakikita ko na that it behooves the local government to see that possibility. Kasi we
Yes.
have, let us say, 1,500 municipalities. If 50% of that would be able to opt that kind of technology, well, why not? Because they now have to invest in real terms kung ano yung mga possibilities. So, si Raymond, taga Batangas, pwedeng sa Batangas, kasi right now, may power plant kayo sa Batangas, di ba? Nandyan ang I remember mga gas station yun, nandyan eh. Oh. So what is your thinking on this, Raymond? Kasi this is now pre-webinar ni ni Guido. We want to participate and see the possibility. Kasi I'm also not happy at the rate we're going na ang electricity kamahal-mahal, ang tubig kamahal-mahal, everything is so expensive. Samantalang, if we can do something about it long term, mag-invest na tayo ngayon, di ba? So
That's
Raymond,
right.
go ahead.
I just gave me a lot of realizations. No? Pakikinig ko lang kasi ngayon nakita ko talaga yung role ng power and electricity to what we promise our people, growth and development. Ang sabi ng government ay i-cascade yung development sa mga local governments, no, sa mga malalayang lugar. No? Ang tendency po kasi ngayon, dahil may mga lugar na walang ilaw at hindi pa ganun nagpupunta sila sa metropolis po eh. And so yung papuntang Maynila pa rin sa mga karatig, no? So mukhang na-realize mo ngayon na critical talaga na padala itong power and kuryente na ito sa mga iba-ibang lugar para magkaroon ng development. I like your term, you have to put the money where your mouth is, di ba? So dapat kung anong sinasabi nila, doon dapat po natin dalhin, no? Yung development. Anyway po, hindi po pwedeng lumipas ng araw na ito na hindi po namin kayo tatanungin, no? Malapit na po kasi yung election 2022 next year. Ito po ang paboritong tanong ni Secretary Cora. Ano po ba ang ating pag-asang nakikita for next year sa ating gobyerno at sa ating lipunan, no? Knowing that there'll be election po next year, Sir Dito.
Well, I can only say that elections always bring excitement in the financial markets. The uncertainty of how the new president will behave seems to be historically been positive. No? The uncertainty. Normally you'd think that bagong presidente so dapat madampen as uncertain. Pero so far, what has happened is kapag bagong presidente, there is that optimism that there will be change. No? Now, whether it's change for
For
because of what's happened in the previous administration, I don't. I mean, probably that's not
yeah.
the relevant thing. The thing is, people look at a change. No? Now, it is of course my hope that uh, we continue with what, well, not only continue, but perhaps enhance the fact that we should push for renewable energy. I'm sorry, but that's my passion right now.
Yes,
And it's a good thing
yes.
that the current administration said that no more coal-fired power plants. No, I think we should really, we still need fossil fuel plants, like gas-fired power plants to match the intermittency of wind and solar.
Mm.
But I'd like to see the democratization of power going down to communities and local governments. No, I recently went to a hearing in the Senate, in a hearing conducted by Senator Poe, and the issue was: is power distribution a natural monopoly? People tend to think that, hey, power is a natural monopoly. Bakit? Kasi malaki yung investment, mahirap mag-invest.
That's not true.
You know, that's not true. I'm a banker.
Yes.
I'm not an engineer. I don't know what kilowatt when I started in natural power, and now I see that it's no big deal. People tend to make it sound
Big.
complicated, but
Yeah.
the big deal, but it's really easy. So I told, and it was in the presence of the senator. I said, "There's no such thing as natural monopoly anymore in power." And because natural monopoly means there cannot be a second one who can come in and give a good service at good price. I said that may be true half a century ago. That may be true
But not
a century
now.
ago,
Yeah.
but not today. With the cost of ICT, information communication technologies going down,
Accessible.
with more and more, home area network gadgets. You have mga Google things. So things have really gone down, and the internet costs have gone down. And so you put together the opportunities in power plus these technologies. Cora, Dr. Arcega, I
Yes.
tell you, the ordinary local government or the ordinary citizen should be able to pool their resources together and be
Yeah.
able to manage their own power networks.
Kaya nga,
It's a
kailangan
challenge to the big
modeling.
utilities, but yeah,
Yeah.
but to democratize power is a passion that I'd like to push the next
Yeah.
government to do, because
Well,
that's where political power and electricity power will finally get
right.
together.
Yeah. Wow, wow. Talagang we're hearing something that really we want to hear. Tamang-tama, sabi ko. I am an advocate really of, even I remember yung uh, small things are beautiful, di ba? Yung meron tayong libro na gano'n nabasa. And
Schumacher.
anyway,
Yeah.
nag-greet dito si Evelyn Roda. She's coming from Washington, D.C., Maryland. Harvey Chua is a cousin, watching also Maritza Brevega, Emilita Bernabe, among others. At we will wait for the others. But anyway, to continue, meron na bang gano'n na right now? Kasi I was thinking really of islands na hindi accessible, but they should really have independent sources of power. Naisip ko yung mga mahirap na lugar, Camiguin, ano pa ba yung mga isla natin, to begin that so that they can see that they are empowered to provide what they need and how much it will really cost. Because I live in Paranaque, but I am not happy that we're not able to produce the things that are needed, and therefore, and the parang the poor remain poor because the whatever goods and services that are needed remain also very expensive. Kaya nga, even the ayuda, sabi ko when I was DSWC secretary, there was no such thing as ayuda. We were providing self-employment, opportunities and practical skills training para they can have jobs, create their own jobs. Unfortunately, at the time, the population was 52 million. Ngayon is 110 million. So I wouldn't dare be Secretary of Social Welfare with the problems that we have right now. Sige, Raymond, go
Ah,
ahead. It's going to be very interesting. Sige. Ikaw,
yeah,
kasi ikaw, taga Batangas.
isa pa hong common na issue no, na naririnig natin, no, importante ang nuclear power plant, no, sa Pilipinas. Pero ah, siguro po importante malaman ng ating mga kababayan, ano po, enough na po ba yung power plant na meron tayo ngayon? Kasi natatandaan ko po, even when I was young, di ba, na hindi tuloy-tuloy yung mga power plant. Like I recall, nung high school ako, parang Bataan power plant po yata yun, no? Na hindi
Nuclear.
matuloy-tuloy kasi nuclear power plant kasi ay tumututol, no, yung mga mamamayan, no? Ngayon na narito po kayo, baka ito po isang clarificatory session, no, para sa ating mga tagapakinig, no. Ito pong ginagampanan ng power plant na ito at ano po ang dapat talagang maging disposisyon, no, ng mga common tao na sa akala nila ay maapektuhan sila nitong pagtatayo nitong mga power plant po.
Well, I can tell you on one hand, I think, and it's my personal view and opinion, that we will need new investments in power in the next years, in the years to come. Now, when it comes to the Bataan nuclear power plant, I don't know if it's a known fact that it was FBR who categorically decided to finally close it down. So, because there was this ambivalence about, well, should
Yes
we
or
open it
no?
up? Should we, yes or no? Yes or no? And so he asked me to do a study, etc. And I recommended not to open it up. And so he made a
Yeah.
final decision not to open it. In fact, the reason, that was during his administration that the nuclear rods were sold. It was not much in the news, but it was something that the government decided to sell the nuclear fuel. No? So, and I think a lot of people have been asking me, should we go back to nuclear power plants, etc. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of questions about the safety, but the biggest problem we have is human resources. No? Because
Yes.
to run a nuclear power plant, you need nuclear scientists, you need nuclear engineers, you need
Which
the
you don't
nuclear
have.
authority, which we don't have. So it
Yeah.
will take us at least 20 years to build the necessary human resource that can run a nuclear power plant, which I think by that time you'll have other technologies in renewable energy, in geothermal, in wind and solar that will ultimately be, the mainstream by that time. No? Because today, solar is already becoming mainstream. So can you imagine 20 years from now, that will be the mainstream. So I guess, and then as I said, no, it's no longer the time when we think of central power plants,
Yeah.
sending it to thousands of kilometers and bringing it to the homes. I think
Cannot
because of
be.
climate change, there's been a change in the ferocity and frequency of typhoons. And so I think if you keep relying on long transmission lines, if you keep relying on big power plants, as in the main, I think we'll be in trouble 25 years from now. And so I think the direction would really be smaller, more efficient, and cheaper power. That in my mind is what this world should be going into, if not is already going into.
Do you know if there is already some communities that can see the light of day and can have the power in a way to see that to make these things happen in their own cities? Do you have an idea whether which communities are likely to go ahead and do that in the next 10 years, 20 years? Guido.
Well, in fact, it's not in the next 10 years or 20 years. We're looking at it for the next 2 to 3 years. No? So
Yes.
we're looking
Next
at a few
administration.
communities. Now, we're looking at some communities in the south where
Yeah.
typhoons are really ferocious
Mindanao.
and frequent.
Mindanao?
Uh,
Mindanao?
No. Southern Luzon. Sorry, Southern Luzon.
Southern Luzon.
Uh,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
Oh.
because we keep getting hit there. No,
Yes.
and
At saka may mga
so
isla.
we're looking. Yeah, so we're looking at being able to provide what we call microgrid power uh,
In
within
Southern
those
Luzon.
communities
Mm,
without increasing the power rates. No? So the biggest
yeah,
challenge is in the past they said, well, solar power is so expensive, having batteries so expensive.
yeah,
But if you look at the savings that you'll have from the point of view of systems loss, the systems losses comes from the technical losses that you have. So from 15%, it goes down to 2-3%, no? Because you're using DC power, no? And when you use your cell phone, it's the same power that you will use for lighting your homes, lighting your TV set, so your radio. So in fact, there are technologies right now that we hope to be implementing in the next 6 months
you could-
in some of the barangays in the south, precisely
wow,
because we want to avoid facing problems in typhoons. No? So
yeah,
this is a small solar system we put in the roof, connected to TV set, electric fan, radio, and sometimes the question is asked, sir, paano kung may typhoon? Di umakyat ka sa bubong mo, kunin mo yung solar panel, itago mo sa baul mo. Okay? So in the meantime, may baterya ka. No? So in the height of the typhoon, meron kang ilaw.
kuryente,
So
yes,
the world has learned a lot. No? So we're
yeah,
working with some state-of-the-art, top-notch companies in the world, no? That are associated with Tesla, Electricity de France, GE, and we're really looking at solutions for the poor. Okay, because
yeah,
well, the rich can afford the
to
power.
pay
The
whatever.
challenge is, yeah, the challenge is how do you provide electricity to the poor? As Pope Francis said in his
Encyclical
latest
letter.
encyclical, um, the- um, you know, not having electricity in the past was not defined as being poor.
Yeah,
But today, in today's environment, not having electricity is a clear indication that you're poor. So we need to find ways and means to mobilize technologies and resources, funds, to be able to provide electricity and power to the poor without losing
yeah.
money. And then I'm not talking about charity. So how do
Uh,
you make everyone happy? Investors, technology providers, and the consumers. It's not
well,
it's not easy, Cora, but
yeah.
the
That's why it's
challenges
not
that we
easy.
face.
Kaya we will bring you back because 1 hour is too short for us to discuss this because no, you have advocates in us for that. No? So the more we want to
Great.
know about it, the better. No. So goodbye na muna tayo, Raymond, because he will come back.
Thank you.
Yes, he has to talk to us some more. Go ahead, your goodbyes, Raymond.
Una't higit sa lahat, para po sa ating mga tagapanood, huwag niyo pong kakalimutan ang napakagandang insights at aral na ibinahagi sa atin Sir Guido Delgado ng National Power Corporation. Ano po? Sa kanya po nag-umpisa ang suggestion ngayong hapon na ito na magkaroon ng democratization of power. So sino man po ang may kakayanan sa atin na mag-participate dito sa democratization of power, wag po tayong nakasampu natin ang loob natin sapagkat ito po ang nakikitang magiging kinabukasan natin, no? Pagdating ho sa power, no? And of course, napakaganda po ng tinuran ngayon ni Sir Delgado, no, na ang ating pamahalaan ay dapat magkaroon ng investments, no, para ang ating infrastructure ay mas maging resilient kasi parang ang sabi nga po ng ating mga kritiko, ang COVID ay kasama na at parte na ng ating buhay mula ngayon at sa mga susunod na taon. At para po sa inyo, Sir Delgado, maraming salamat po. Ang inyo pong
Thank
paglilingkod
you.
bilang presidente ng National Power Corporation, pagamat ito'y hindi alam ng buong sambayan ng Pilipino, ay napakalaking kontribusyon sa atin ngayon at sa mga susunod na panahon. Bagamat kayo po ay nagtapos ng inyong panunungkulan sa National Power Corporation, ito po ang isa sa magiging napakalaki po ninyong kontribusyon na kailanman at magpakailan pa man ay magiging masaya po ang inyong tatlong apo. No? Kasi nang dahil po sa inyo ay narating no ng ilaw ang mga liblib na lugar at patuloy ang pag-asa sa isang maunlad at isang mapayapang Pilipinas. Maraming pong salamat at mabuhay po kayo hanggang sa muli nating pagkikita, Sir Guido.
At para kay Guido,
Thank
ito
you,
yung
Dr.
poem.
Arcega.
Ito ang poem
Thank-
para sa'yo, no?
Thank you.
From Rabindranath Tagore,
Yes,
when he
Cora.
wrote, "Where mind is without fear and head held high, where the world has not been broken to fragments by narrow domestic walls, where tireless striving stretch their arms toward perfection, where the mind is led forward to thee into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake." Thank you for pagising mo sa amin, and we will invite you again. Meron kaming tawag na
Sure.
come back. No, and I think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity again for our listeners. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Cora.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Arcega. Bye-bye.
Thank you.